the cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated.
This sentiment has been echoed by Rachel Zegler in almost every single interview before the new ones, after she got spanked by Mickey for her insolence.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. It's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world.
Silence! You know the penalty if you fail.
The cartoon is so beloved. It's like a monumental moment in film history.
Yeah.
It was like the first feature-length cartoon movie. All of these amazing things that happened for that film are the reason that you and I really get to sit here today, because it made Disney what it is.
Finally awake.
It's amazing that they allowed an unhinged individual like her off the leash instead of giving her a specific script to follow. Regardless, we are here for one point, and one point only. Is the 1937 cartoon antiquated? Well, since I haven't seen the film since 1937, I decided to rewatch it and see what horrors this movie has. I mean, think about it. A movie that is 87 years old. People were born and died in the span that this film was out. There must be a slew of antiquated ideals that the movie holds. 87 years, a very long time. There must be so much in there that would make the modern day audiences cringe their souls out of their bodies. And how unabashedly racist, sexist, and ableist the movie must be.
Boy, can you get me a cup of joe? I'm literally freezing my nuts off.
What the fuck did he just say to me?
That is what the movie is, right? That's the problem with the original Snow White, right? There are good reasons for the movie to be remade, and it all has to do with how antiquated and intolerant the film is. Are you telling the truth, Rachel? You are, aren't you? Rachel, wouldn't you? You wouldn't lie. Rachel, you wouldn't lie to everyone, would you? Rachel? Rachel?
Rachel! Rachel! Rachel!
Shadow Legends.
What a fucking liar, dude. What a fucking Weasley little liar, dude.
Antiquated? My freaking antiquated, wrinkly ass. This film has aged like the finest wine in all the land. I'm not kidding when I say this. This movie aged better in 87 years than Going Red did in a day. This movie will age fine for the next 1,000 years, and you can quote me on that. Thing is, me, like many people who haven't seen the film in years, assumed that Rachel was right. Even if she was being wholly obnoxious about her point, people generally hold up the film as a great achievement for its time. Well, I'm here to tell you that the movie deserves higher praise than that. Yes, it is true that it is the first feature-length fairy tale from Disney, and that alone deserves it admiration. But the film itself, the substance that makes it what it is what gives it its true value. The opening of the film introduces us to the vain queen, and vain is important to remember. The whole motivation of this woman is to look the best in the world. Unfortunately, there is a fine piece of ass in the bottom of her stairwell, and 1 second. Oh, never mind then. There's a good-looking underage woman that no one in their right mind would push to get close to if they are over the age of 15. Either way, since the queen knew that Snow White would look better than her down the line, she forced her to act as a maid, despite her being a princess. Now, does Snow White cry about this? Does she stop functioning the second that her life isn't going the way she wanted and turn on her phone and cry to TikTok about her problems? No. She does her work as she's been ordered, because at her age, and with the queen over her head, there isn't much to do. This 14-year-old is a lot more mature than any 14-year-old alive today.
I believe the age of consent is the age of maturity.
Shut the hell up, Sneeko. Anyways, she thinks to find solace in her struggles and get her chores done. But since the film is economical, which I bet the remake won't be, we are introduced to what she wishes for most dearly. She wants a way out of this dreary life. And man, her voice is amazing.
I'm wishing for the one I love. Then they're orphans. That's too bad. I know. We'll clean the house and surprise
Like, no joke, this is the most adorable singing voice I've heard in my life. She calls the well she uses for water, for her chores, a wishing well, which is undoubtedly a way for her to cope with her situation. But it also sets up a future scene as to why she would wish for things down the line. Achieving more than one thing per scene? What? Whoever thought of that? A prince on his horsey hears her singing as he is passing by and decides to investigate it, and it's important to understand his perspective, what he is seeing, and how he is judging the situation. He hears beautiful singing, looks into the courtyard, and finds a young maid and is instantly infatuated with her. Considering that he doesn't know who Snow White is, that would mean that he found her to be very agreeable despite him believing that she is a maid. A maid. A prince fell in love with a maid, regardless of what she is wearing, because he thought she was pretty and had a beautiful voice. Now remind me, how the hell is that antiquated? I would expect an antiquated film to have the scene go more like this. I'm wishing for the one I love. Oh, what is this beautiful singing? Echolocation powers, activate! Today. Ew, a maid! Gross, bye. But sire, she's gorgeous. Shouldn't we judge people on their character instead of their status in society? She clearly has a very positive outlook on life regardless of how bad her situation is. Give her a chance and I'm sure she'd surprise you. What the fuck am I doing? You can talk? And then the horse gets cast off into Mount Doom. Today! So, an antiquated film teaches people that judging others by their status in society is not something to do. The prince saw a maid and didn't care. Instead, he jumped in headlong to meet who he intends to, potentially, make his wife. Now, the weird part is that he does jump into private property, which is kinda weird, but he does this to meet her, and doesn't really push it too much. Plus, I mean, he's royalty, he would be accepted in the kingdom. Either way, who knows what he was doing there in the first place. He could have been there on some sort of diplomacy mission, and have been inside the kingdom and met the queen, and on his way out heard Snow White and decided to meet her. There are a lot of ways to explain away this decision. I will call it a contrivance instead of an antiquation. Either way, my boy Prince Charming greets Snow White in the well, basically answering her wish to meet someone she would love. And she runs away ashamed of the way she looks. He doesn't care though, and proceeds to serenade her. Now, is serenading antiquated? Yes, absolutely. Is it bad? No.
I love you, bitch.
Now, I wouldn't do it, but a lot of women would love to be serenaded by a prince, wouldn't they? And honestly, I believe that the remake will have a serenading scene in it anyways. Regardless, the queen is mad, and it is important to realize that the queen is mad because she is vain. She is extremely vain. In the remake, they wanted to make the story about how fairest in the land means most capable of running a kingdom, but in the same breath, they also say that Snow White needs to learn to become a great leader.
The fairest of them all meaning who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader. And the reality is, you know, Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power before she can come into power over a kingdom.
Why in the hell is the mirror telling the IDF soldier that a person who isn't yet worthy is more worthy than her? The whole point of the film is that Snow White was already more attractive than her, at no fault of her own. Snow White gets punished for existing because the queen is cruel and vain. Snow White is the opposite, meaning that she is kind and selfless, which is clearly showcased in the next scene. As the queen orders a hunter to kill Snow White, he reluctantly accepts her orders out of fear, including placing her heart in a box. If I was a queen, I would ask for her head to be sure, but I guess it's hard to walk through a kingdom with the princess's head in a bag bleeding and attracting maggots. Snow White is sent out to pick wildflowers, and she is finally dressed like a princess. Why? Because the queen's tyranny cannot be shown to her subjects so flauntingly. She can hide Snow White in the castle away from peering eyes, but when she's outside, she can't look like a ragged maid, or else people would get suspicious. Who wants to bet that the remake will get this completely wrong? Anyways, as she is going around singing and picking flowers, she finds a bird and helps it find its parents. So, Rachel, is it antiquated to help animals too? Because so far the movie has shown me that women are complex and different, that the worst of them are cruel and vain, and the best of them are kind and selfless. Anyway, the hunter tries to kill her, but he is unable to because, well, she's completely innocent. Who wants to bet that the remake will have her beating the hunter up and him either running away from her or dying by her just gently pushing him and him falling into a river or off a mountain? Remakes, am I right?
But Dad, I saved his life! British people be like, can I get a bowl of water?
Anyway, he spills the beans and she runs off into the woods. Now this scene is important. Some people might say, well, it's scary for children. And yes, it is. But it is also very important to realize why the forest is warping into this monster that is trying to capture her and harm her. Snow White was just told that her life could never be the same again. That she has to run away and never look back. That her cruel stepmother will kill her if she finds her. She is out of options. Her only option is to hide in the woods. If she leaves the kingdom to another one, first of all, that would be quite the trek. But secondly, anyone from the other kingdom could recognize her as a lost princess. So her best option is to stay away from people and hide in the woods. This is such an overbearing realization. Her life has been turned upside down. And in her stress, even though it is still day out and even though she loves nature and animals, she can't help but feel like everything around her is trying to attack her. Since the person who was tasked with taking care of her and has been around her as a parent for years has been revealed as a murderous, jealous meanie. Is this antiquated, Rachel? Does being scared and betrayed leading to what was once a sight of beauty becoming a sight of horror in your eyes an antiquated way of looking at the world? Because to me, this seems like a very in-depth look into someone's psyche after they would have experienced a betrayal and trauma. It seems to me so far that the movie is a lot better than you have ever given it credit. Snow White has a lot more going for it than being the first feature-length animated movie that Disney put out. Regardless, after she gets overwhelmed, she collapses and shields her view from the world around her, allowing us to see what is actually happening. All the evil eyes are nothing more than friendly creatures who are curious about what they're seeing. The movie implies in this scene and the later one that the animals are quite adept at judging a person's character by looking at them. And that's fine, like it's a form of symbolism. But that is probably the most irresponsible part of the film. Don't mess with wildlife. Ever. Here's where we get to an actually antiquated idea that the movie has. A 14-year-old girl who had her life ruined by an angry and spiteful stepmother is capable of putting aside her emotional outbursts and look out for the wildlife around her. Do you understand? She was able to find inner strength and look for a bright side in order to help those around her, instead of posting it on the For You page and going viral for being a little bitch. After that, she is directed to the house of the Dwarves and invites herself in. After finding the house to be extremely dirty, she decides that she could potentially get to stay there if she cleaned the house for them. This is then repeated after the Dwarves meet her and she tells them that she would like to stay in their house in exchange for her cooking and cleaning the house for them.
Sexism!
How dare you oppress women, you disgusting chauvinistic prick? Well, here's my argument. What we have here is a homeowner and a homeless person. The homeowner could, out of the kindness of their own heart, give someone refuge at their place, but Snow White isn't going to stay there for a week. For all she knows, she's staying there for years. She has no way out, so instead she offers the homeowners a service for a place to stay. That is called being a good person. If you're going to stay in someone's home for a while, the last thing you should do is pull a Squidward.
That's two things in this house that won't work.
Then go fix them.
And what does Snow White have to offer as a 14-year-old who's worked as a maid in her home? Exactly. So it's only natural as a conclusion. I mean, she is so caring and forward-thinking that she decides to show them her worth before they even get home by offering them a free sample of her services with no promise of payment in the form of a place to stay. It's almost like Snow White is a kind and caring individual who doesn't like to be a burden on anyone. Hospitality can only go so far. I mean, imagine if she goes into their house and forces them to work while she dances and sings instead of doing anything. That would never happen, right?
Now you wash the dishes. You tidy up the room. You clean those cobwebs. And he'll use the broom.
Well played, Disney. You completely misunderstood the point. Again, this is made doubly bad because in the original, the dwarves were returning home from a long day's mining session where they found diamond and were going back to their base to craft some armor and tools. Diamond! Instead, imagine after working a 14-hour day swinging a pickaxe, you are then greeted by some child who makes you work more. I think Disney is not that tone deaf though, since the leaked footage is actually in the day instead of the night, so it seems like Disney is making it so that she's making them work on a day off or in the morning before they go off to the mines. Still doesn't change the fact that she didn't offer them anything in return for their hospitality and their endangerment for holding a fugitive. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Let's talk about the dwarves. Considering the controversy that was spinning around the dwarves, where apparently the term dwarf is somehow offensive now, if you think about it, the 1937 movie should be chock full of ableist terms to make fun of them, right? Right, Rachel? Right? It must be, because it's so old and antiquated. Right, Rachel? Well, it came as a huge shock to me that somehow, the movie doesn't call them anything other than little men. Little men. That's literally what they are. Even the queen didn't call them midgets. And she's evil! In general, the original film is quite the charming depiction of dwarves. They have a banger song. We have very different and varied characters. We have many kind, caring individuals around them that instantly empathize with Snow White, offer her a place to stay.
She's a female, and all females is poison. They're full of wicked wiles.
Oh man, we got Andrew Tate in the house, y'all.
But females are barely sentient.
Grumpy is quite the character, isn't he? Dude hates women big time. He's probably the most antiquated character in this film, I think. I mean, I still hear what he says to this day. It's not really antiquated considering modern talking points from a lot of people in the Red Pill movement. As much as you might not like them, the Red Pill movement is modern, and is now more modern than feminism. Honestly, feminism is now the antiquated movement. And I'm not saying that as in one is wrong and one is right. Antiquated isn't necessarily wrong, it just means old. Does that mean that the original Snow White is more modern than the remake, where Snow White does nothing but dance and sing and order the overworked dwarves around like a villain? Well, anyways, here's another bunch of choice lines from Grumpy.
Women. Her wiles are beginning to work. You give them an inch, and they'll walk all over you. Next thing you know, she'll be tying your ears up, smelling you up with that stuff called, perfume. A fine bunch of water lilies you turned out to be. I'd like to see anybody make me wash if it isn't water. Mush. Women. A fine kettle of fish.
After that, we move on to the dinner scene. I think this is where the remake misunderstood what Snow White had to offer to the dwarves as a mother figure. The remake has her becoming a controlling matriarch, while in the original, she is acting as a mother because when it comes to the home, she is the expert here. She knows how to cook, how to clean, how to keep the house neat. She also knows that they should have clean hands. The reason she takes on the role of mother is because the dwarves are completely out of their depth when it comes to housekeeping. But if Snow White was in the mines with them, they would have taken the role as father figures to keep her safe and to teach her how to mine. Get it? It's not the personalities that are causing the shift in roles, it's their abilities that causes this shift. It's the scenarios. Effectively, they are children when it comes to being neat and tidy people, but they are absolute chads when it comes to digging to diamond level and fighting the Ender Dragon. It's plain and simple, but when you have half a brain cell, you assume that her taking charge is due to her being some sort of controlling person. I mean, in general, it's assumed that when a man marries a woman, and if the woman ends up being a stay-at-home wife, she will take on the role of the house mother, and that would include making sure that us disgusting men have cleaned our hands before eating for our own health. Sure, that could be seen as misogynism and hashtag I ain't yo mama, but you need to realize that women that do this for their husbands don't do it out of some oppression. If you think that women tidy and clean and fix up the house for their men because they are forced to do so, you need to actually meet women. Trust me when I say this, women do this automatically. I have never been more shocked than when I see women I've known my entire life, lifelong feminists by the way, who after meeting a man that they love, become the most stereotypical housewife who does the exact thing that they call toxic and part of patriarchy.
I just want to say that I love cooking for people I care about, and this is not something that's expected of me. This is just something I love doing.
I don't think women should be forced to do any of this because honestly, I don't trust any woman to be able to clean and cook better than me. So please stay out of my kitchen. Hell, stay out of my house. But it is a mainstay that generally speaking, women who fall in love with a person become servile. I don't know why, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Snow White is doing what she's doing because she cares for the well-being of the dwarves and wants to offer them the best life they can get while they allow her to stay. That's why they go with it, because they know she's right and that doing so will only lead them to getting a better house and better meals. It's a give and take, like any good relationship. You can't just take and take. That makes you a villain, doesn't it, Rachel? After that, the queen learns that Snow White is still alive, and so she decides to take matters into her own hands. She transforms herself into an old woman and makes a poisoned apple to put Snow White in eternal sleep. We then see that the dwarves are playing music and singing for Snow White, which is then followed by her telling them that she's in love with the prince that she met a day ago. And bruh, she sounds amazing. Pretending that Rachel Zegler with all her autotune glory is anywhere near a suitable replacement is a joke. Afterwards, it's time for bed. She tries to send them upstairs, but instead they allow her to stay in their beds, and she asks them 2 times if they are sure. Guess why? Because she cares about their well-being. But she knows it's not proper for a lady to sleep in the room with the 7 elderly men, but I mean, that might be quite antiquated. But I mean, how many women today are willing to sleep in a room with 7 men that they've never met before? Snow White was offering to sleep on her own in the bottom, but they were not willing to let her sleep on the floor, basically, because that's the only place she would fit, really, so they let her sleep upstairs. I guess it's antiquated because it's a form of female privilege to be allowed to sleep in a room alone when the rest sleep on the hard floor, and chairs, and pots, and pans, and drawers, and cupboards, and sinks somehow. And in the modern day, we've made it so that women are now equal to men and don't have any privileges that men don't have anymore. Yes sirree, we're completely equal. After that, the day rolls around. The dwarves leave for work after getting a kiss on the forehead from Snow White. I mean, she's really become their mother at this point. Kinda weird that a 14-year-old is playing that role, but the dwarves are not coming from a place of malice. They genuinely appreciate her and consider a kiss from her to be a blessing. After that, the old hag arrives and offers Snow White an apple, and the animals, being able to tell that the hag has bad intentions, attack her to protect Snow White. But Snow White shoos them away to protect her, and even though she was told that she should not allow anyone in, she allows her in to help her out. Pause here. You might remember a certain franchise, not sure if you've heard of it, but it rhymes with Iftar Whores, where the main protagonist of the sequel trilogy had only one flaw, it being that she sees the best in everyone, even when it is not there. So her flaw is being too good. Here's the thing though, Snow White has the same flaw. But why does Snow White work better than Renee? Because Snow White seeing the best in everyone is based on not judging people before she knows what their intentions are and after meeting them. Renee believing in the best of Lorraine makes no sense because she knows for a fact that he is a murdering psychopath. Snow White cares for the old lady because for all she knows, she is just an old lady, not the queen trying to kill her. Having someone's flaw being that they see the best in everything, regardless of the reality, is fine when it is understandable why they would have been tricked. I mean, most of us will feel bad for an old lady being attacked by animals even if we are on the run from a witch. You see how you write that character, make her optimism and short-sighted kindness relatable, not illogical, and you just might not piss off your audience. Snow White then eats the apple after being told that it is a wishing apple. Remember in the beginning how Snow White was established as a character that wishes for things? Wow, it's almost as if this film is economical with its character development. Moving on, the animals inform the dwarves and they find Snow White sprawled on the floor, seemingly dead. They chase the queen, but she falls off the mountain after seemingly nature itself kills her for her wickedness. I mean, it's set up. The vultures follow her because they can tell that she isn't long for this world. Symbolism. Cool, ain't it? After that, the dwarves keep her in a glass coffin because they couldn't find it in their hearts to bury her. And some time passes before the prince finds her.
With a guy who literally stalks her.
Rachel, you know that Snow White invited the prince to find her, right? You know that Snow White actually told the prince in no uncertain terms that she is accepting of his advances and would want to see him again, right? Stalking her, he's looking for her because he learned off screen that she is the princess that she is missing and that she wants him to be her lover. I think it's high time that actors are barred from doing any more interviews. Actors keep proving time and time again that they have no idea what they're talking about. Look, okay, it is antiquated for a man to pursue a woman after meeting her once and falling for her, right? No. No, not at all. It's quite modernist, I think. If anything, it's weird that the prince didn't just watch her twitch and decide to fall for her. After that, the prince kisses her corpse and she gets back up. Okay, that part is definitely weird. I can't argue with that. I know, it's the fairy taleism bleeding in, but it is still quite awkward that a person finds a corpse and kisses it without any instruction as to what would save her. But regardless, she does wake up. I mean, yeah, I would call that weird. So there you go, Rachel. I'll give you 1 point. Symbolically, it could mean anything, although it specifically is referring to how women sexually awaken. Still kinda weird considering the age, but we can move on. I would agree that the best fix is to add a point where someone figures out what the only way for her to wake up is, and it being love's first kiss. I would agree that the best fix is to add a point where someone figures out that the only way for her to wake up is love's first kiss. Like, make it some sort of magic that everyone knows about, but the dwarves don't know who the prince is, and so they feel helpless, and the prince then finds her and knows that that would save her, blah blah blah. Easy fix, but still an awkward way to end the film. After that, everyone is happy, and the prince and Snow White get together and make babies. Woohoo! So that's the story. That is the film that is being remade so that it's less antiquated. And well, is it antiquated? Is telling kids to be responsible, not shallow, not self-obsessed, giving, nurturing, caring, kind, and helpful an antiquated message that should be thrown out into a fire? I hope not. Snow White seems to be the kind of film that teaches kids some of the best Disney has to offer. I mean, seriously, what does turning red teach kids? Lie to your parents? Take photos of your panda? What does Toy Story 4 teach kids? Leave your responsibilities behind? Give evil people a chance after a chance regardless of what they deserve? Honestly, if it were up to me, the classics are all I'd show my kids. I don't think the modern movies are responsibly made at all. They are chock full of bad lessons, bad role models, kids twerking. Not a good look. But what about Grumpy? He's a sexist, misogynism, chauvinist who is disgusting and still gets a good ending? You mean the guy who gets constant misfortune at every turn because he is considered wrong and unforgivable by the film? That Grumpy? Moving on. So, is Disney's original Snow White antiquated? No. Yes it is. And how? Snow White is 14, Prince Charming is 18. I know some people think he's in his 30s, but no, it's not the case. Walt Disney himself says that he is 18. Now, here's why I don't think it's a problem.
I believe the age of consent is the age of maturity.
Shut the hell up, Sneeko. The movie never mentions Snow White's age. Neither does it mention Prince Charming's age. For all we know, they are both 18 and perfectly legal to do what they are doing. So who cares about what some art book says somewhere? All you need to judge a film is the film itself. Anything extra is not impactful, unless it's a canon continuation of the story. So we're good. What making this video did was reintroduce me to a beautiful movie that I had long forgotten. I honestly will see it again quite consistently. It's funny, it's beautiful, the singing is amazing, the acting is serviceable, and the animation on the non-rotoscoped characters is quite fluid and fun. It has a great message for everyone to see. It really is a timeless piece of art, and no, it is not antiquated. Not in the slightest. It is more than long-standing as it is, and I would recommend it to everyone who wants to see a good Disney film. Start with the one that started it all. That being said, I think that the remake will be the one to end remakes, which would be quite poetic, no? Like a Harry Potter title. The one who started it all. The one who ended it all. I can't wait.